Well, government vaccine experts will have the final say on the clinical trials. So after meeting with the Russian developer and scientists, what can we expect moving forward? Joining us tonight is Science and Technology Undersecretary Dr. Rowena Guevara. Dr. Guevara, thank you so much for joining us on The Final Word. Everyone wants to really find out what transpired in that meeting between the DOST and the Russian manufacturer. Can you give us some salient details on what happened during that meeting?
We discussed the timeline for the vaccine for clinical trial phase 3 in the Philippines. So in that meeting, we learned that they have finished phase 1 and almost finishing phase 2. And so the first step would be signing of a confidentiality agreement between the Philippines and Gamaleya so that our vaccine expert panel can take a look at the results of the clinical trials phase 1 and phase 2. After they give that to us and the vaccine expert panel has reviewed it, they can get the permit from FDA, our Philippine FDA, to do a clinical trial phase 3 in the Philippines.
And when will this phase 3 clinical trials begin, Dr. Guevara?
We expect that the first 3 steps that I mentioned will occur from now until end of September, all things being easily done if there are no hitches. And then we expect that maybe in the fourth quarter of the year until the first quarter of next year, we will be doing the phase 3 clinical trials.
As you mentioned, Gamaleya has already done phase 1 and phase 2 trials for this COVID-19 vaccine. Have they released any scientific data to the DOST on the results of the phase 1 and phase 2?
That is the reason why we need to have a confidentiality agreement first. Once we've signed that, they will release the information to us.
And when will you be signing this confidentiality agreement, Dr. Guevara?
Best case scenario, we'll get it done before the end of the month, the signing of the CDA.
So apart from basically being transparent with the scientific data from phase 1 and phase 2, will this confidentiality agreement also include the kinds of chemicals, the kinds of drugs that have been used to concoct this COVID-19 vaccine?
Yes, and more importantly, the results on the humans on which they tested the vaccine.
So, Doctor, tell us, the President seems to be very confident and very trusting in this Russian coronavirus vaccine called Sputnik V. From what you have gathered, the information so far, should we Filipinos feel the same kind of confidence as the President after speaking to the Russian manufacturer?
Confidence from a scientific point of view is based on information and facts and data. And we are very confident that they are going to give us the results of phase 1 and phase 2. And then our experts will evaluate for safety, efficacy, effectiveness.
Apart from the Russians, Dr. Guevara, you also have the Chinese having their own vaccines, and the President during the State of the Nation has also said that we will have access to these Chinese vaccines. Is this vaccine also going through the same process as the Russians?
Yes, we're almost done with the confidentiality agreement with the Chinese.
And this is for how many vaccines, Dr. Guevara? Because there are several vaccines also being developed by China for COVID-19.
We're looking at 2 coming from China.
And will it also be the same period during the last quarter of this year where we could also be involved in the phase 3 trials, just at the same time as the Russians?
We don't know if it's the beginning of the fourth quarter or towards the end, but maybe in the fourth quarter also for the Chinese.
And last night, Doctor, we spoke with the former FDA commissioner in the United States, and he said that we shouldn't really trust the data from the Russians and the Chinese, and we should be looking basically at the COVID-19 vaccines of the United States and Europe.
Well, everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Mhm.
We just base our opinion on the science and we will look at the data once we have it with us. And by the way, we're not just talking to the Chinese and the Russians, we're
Mhm.
also talking to other countries as well where we have bilateral agreements. And we have been talking also to the US and also to Australia and other European countries. So they're all on equal footing as far as we are concerned. We just take a look at the data.
And what have you seen so far from the scientific data from the Western pharmaceutical companies? Because they have been more transparent with their phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials.
What we have found is
Mm.
that when you look at the literature, there's only so much you can get. You really need to execute a confidentiality agreement to see the detail that really matters to those who are going to evaluate the vaccine.
And at this point, doctor, do you already have an idea how many Filipinos will be part of this phase 3 trials of Gamaleya's COVID-19 vaccine when it is brought here to the Philippines sometime in the fourth quarter?
At this point in time, we do not know the number. It will depend on the protocol that they will submit to the FDA, and it depends on the FDA if they will approve that protocol.
And how many, but in your view, doctor, how many Filipinos should be tested during this phase 3 trial?
We know that for phase 3 clinical trial,
Mm.
it can be from 10,000 to 30,000 total.
Mhm.
But then they are testing it not just here in the Philippines. So it will be an aggregate of data or aggregate number of persons or subjects who will be under the clinical phase 3 trial. Just to give you an example, we are doing the WHO, World
Mhm.
Health Organization Solidarity Trial. And because there are so many countries participating, we imagine that in the Philippines, we will have only about 100 to maybe 1,000 people who will be vaccinated with the WHO Solidarity Trial vaccines.
And now that you mentioned about the solidarity trials, Dr. Guevara, which particular COVID-19 vaccines will be part of that solidarity trial wherein about maybe 1,000 or 2,000 Filipinos will be tested?
Rico, at this point in time,
Mm.
there are several vaccines in the running,
Mhm.
but based on the information that we got, about 4 or 5 vaccines will eventually end up to be the part of the WHO solidarity trial. And so we will try all 4 or 5 vaccines here.
Would you have the names of those vaccines, Dr. Guevara?
At this point in time, there are 19 in the running,
Mhm.
so we don't know yet which one.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us on the final word. Science and Technology Undersecretary Dr. Rowena Guevara.